It's my pleasure to be here today to recognize a special partnership involving the Mental Health Commission of Canada, the Department of National Defence, Alberta Health Services, Alberta Health, and last but not least, and probably most important of all, the Calgary Police Service. So it's a very interesting partnership that's taken place. And we're going to have a series of speakers, and each of those speakers will talk about the particular role that each of the organizations has played. And following the presentations, we'll open it up to questions. So there'll be lots of time to do that. R2MR, which is the Road to Mental Readiness, is just a short term or short form that we use for it, was developed by Lieutenant Colonel Bailey and her team for the Department of National Defence. It's since been modified by the Calgary Police Service to actually meet its needs and requirements, but that's one of the beauties of the program is its flexibility and the fact that it can be tailored to meet the specific needs of an organization. Now, this has happened here. The Calgary Police Service is the first municipal police force in the entire country to actually adopt this program and begin using it. And that's happened because of the special leadership shown by the Calgary Police Service and also the importance that they place on the mental health and well-being of their personnel. Right now, I'd like to introduce one of our major partners in this whole process, Deputy Chief Roger Chaffin, who will be filling in for Chief Hansen. So, Deputy Chief.
Thank you. Just like to welcome our partners from the Mental Health Commission of Canada, the Department of National Defence, and Alberta Health Services. Initiatives such as this take collaboration and cooperation. Together, we have been able to adapt the Road to Mental Readiness program to suit the needs of the Calgary Police Service. Today's workplace requires supports and resources that allow staff to thrive. As police officers, our physical and mental well-being ensures we carry out our goal of keeping the community and its people safe, often when they are at their most vulnerable. I'm confident the Road to Mental Readiness provides practical lessons in effectively managing the stresses and challenges that come our way. To date, over 300 members of the Calgary Police Service have participated in the Road to Mental Readiness program, and we will continue to ensure that all our sworn and civilian members receive this training. We all encounter those moments both in our personal and professional lives that test our resiliency. As we take on challenging issues in a growing city and an international climate with local impact, first responders must be able and equipped to respond with a clear head and a calm hand to these issues. I trust that the Road to Mental Readiness program will become a valuable asset to all of our employees. And to that, I'll sit and take questions later. Thank you very much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Suzanne Bailey, and it's thanks to her leadership, which has been very instrumental in terms of developing and implementing the Road to Mental Readiness. By sharing her knowledge and experiences, she's helped improve the mental resilience of members who are in the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as those people who will soon be using and adopting the Road to Mental Readiness for their requirements. She currently serves as the mental health education advisor with the Mental Health Education Advisory Committee and sits on the NATO Working Group on Mental Health Education. Lieutenant Colonel Bailey.
Thank you, Mike. Well, it's very exciting for me to be here today to see the success of this program. I think it was 2 years ago that I first came into this building on another cold and snowy day. It's always been cold and snowy when I've been in this building. But when we had our first discussion about how to possibly apply the lessons that we learned in the Canadian Forces and in the Department of National Defence to the Calgary Police Services. And when we started building this in the Canadian Forces almost 7 years ago, we realized that we really needed to find a different way to increase mental health literacy, to help people recognize signs of distress in themselves and in others, and give them some skills to be able to help themselves and to help their peers and their colleagues early on, and not wait until they were diagnosed with an illness to step forward and get some help. And we saw some success with that very early on in the implementation of the program within the military community. And it didn't take long for people to start saying, have you thought of how this might help police officers, firefighters, paramedics, other first responders that are out there. So it's very exciting to see that it has been fully embraced by the Calgary Police Service and that they're getting such good feedback. Because with programs like this, not only can it help those of us in uniform and those of us who work with those in uniform to perform our jobs better in the very demanding circumstances we find ourselves in, but if we can recognize our distress early and, seek early care, a lot of us won't go on to develop diagnosable mental illnesses, and we can actually stay doing our jobs and be more effective for a longer period of time without putting our health and our mental health at risk. So I think this is a partnership that will lead to bigger and better things. I know there are a number of other police forces who are looking forward to taking on some of the lessons learned from CPS, so we look forward to supporting that partnership with the Mental Health Commission to make this program available more widely. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Up next is Edward Mantler. He's the Vice President of Programs and Priorities with the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Ed joined the Commission earlier this year, bringing 2 decades of experience in health and mental health. Most recently, he was appointed as the inaugural CEO of Sask's Docs, a Treasury Board Crown Corporation mandated with physician recruitment and retention for the province of Saskatchewan. There he introduced an effective and ethical physician recruitment and retention strategies unique to the province of Saskatchewan, and we have the good fortune of having him as a member of the Mental Health Commission of Canada. So, Ed.
Thank you, Mike, and on behalf of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, thank you all for inviting us to be part of this very important announcement. It's an honor to be here with such esteemed leaders in workplace mental health. The Mental Health Commission of Canada is a national, non-for-profit organization charged with transforming the Canadian mental health landscape through partnerships and collaboration. In 2012, we launched Canada's first mental health strategy, and today's event marks an effort to implement that strategy's recommendations, such as promoting workplace wellness, improving training for police officers, and combating stigma. Stigma is a major barrier preventing people from seeking assistance. The longer an individual avoids getting the help they need, the harder it is to successfully treat them. Stigma is also a barrier to creating inclusive and supportive environments and workplaces. Across Canada, every week, 500,000 individuals are unable to attend work because of mental health problems, mental illness, or mental injury. We've been researching the most promising and best practices to reduce stigma since 2009. The Department of National Defence has spent the last 6 years developing and rigorously testing R2MR. 3 years ago, the Commission began a partnership with the Department of National Defence to make the program available to first responders, such as police, as there are a lot of similarities between soldiering and civilian policing. We partnered with Alberta Health Services and Calgary Police Services in September 2012 as part of Alberta Health Services' Minding the Workplace project on the police adaptation for R2MR. The overall goals of the program are to address and promote mental health, increase resiliency, and reduce stigma. The program helps take the stigma out of mental illness by using a simple color chart known as the mental health continuum. The model categorizes one's mental health within a continuum, green being healthy, yellow reacting, orange injured, and red ill. The model allows an individual to easily identify signs or indicators of poor mental health in themselves or others without diagnostic labels and their associated stigma. And the model stresses that individuals can move along the continuum. For instance, if one ends up in the red or ill phase, it's possible for he or she to recover and move back towards the green, healthy phase. The model also teaches, most importantly, appropriate actions or coping skills that one can take for themselves or others at each point along the continuum to return to green and or to stay in green. Testing has shown that the road to mental readiness is highly effective at achieving its key objectives. Evaluation results and various organizations show statistically significant reduction in stigma and increases in resiliency skills. The Calgary Police Service has a strong reputation for providing support for the mental well-being of its members. It's added to that reputation by becoming a champion for mental health in the workplace. It's the first municipal police service to use the program, and since CPS began developing the R2MR program, at least 10 other police services or organizations across Canada have committed to delivering the program. CPS has actually been providing training and support to some of these agencies. This project is an excellent example of a very worthwhile and productive collaboration involving various levels of government: federal, provincial, municipal, Department of National Defence, Alberta Health Services, CPS, and the Commission. There's momentum to accelerate the changes called for in the mental health strategy for Canada. We cannot stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Now, last but not least, Alberta Health Services and Alberta Health. This project wouldn't have been possible without their leadership and funding. Alberta Health Services received grant funding from Alberta Health to develop and implement and evaluate initiatives that address mental health in the workplace, and the Road to Mental Readiness is the result of that funding. We have Dr. Michael True with us today from Alberta Health. Dr. True is the Chief Addiction and Mental Health Officer for Alberta. He was appointed last year to coordinate the psychological and social response for flood victims in southern Alberta. And he also helped with the development of Creating Connections, Alberta's addiction and mental health strategy. Dr. True.
Get my iPad going the right way. Thank you, Michael. And it's a pleasure to be here with this group today and really come to celebrate moving mental wellness into the workplace. I think what's most notable about this is that we have leadership from national, provincial, and of course here at the Calgary Police Service saying that mental wellness is important, and that not only that mental wellness is something that we can plan about. We can do something about it. We don't have to be passive. We can actually help people to build their resilience. Resilience is not some magical thing that happens and either is or is not. It is something that we grow and we can develop, and in fact, this is a program that helps people develop just that. I think this shows a good deal of not only insight but foresight on the part of many people from everywhere, from the Mental Health Commission, from our armed forces, and as was indicated, Alberta Health was able to provide a funding grant that went over the course of about 4 years to the tune of $500,000. One portion of that, not a terribly large portion, was passed on to the Calgary Police Service to start this as a pilot, and they have found that it is actually very useful and are now expanding that. And what more can we ask for of the people who are making decisions, but to do things with insight and foresight and to act on those, and then to build on this as we are seeing with this. So I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased to celebrate this positive activity to support mental health in the workplace. So thank you.
At this point, our panel is open to take questions from the media, and if you want to just put up your hand, we'll just sort of go through order as I see people, and if you can indicate who you'd like to speak to.
Well, I think it's an excellent question. I think the impact to the men and women, the front lines of any public safety organization it's difficult really to articulate to most people, because most people would see us in our initial foray into an event, whether it be a difficult homicide or some of the things we've seen recently, perhaps in Ottawa, some of the stuff you saw there on TV. What happens later is the challenge for us. It's when those people go home after they've done their job, after they've fulfilled their role in terms of ensuring the public is safe again, is making sure they're able to cope, they have those resiliency skills, and they actually have the courage and the confidence to speak up when they're not doing well, or have those signs be recognized by their peers. These are commitments these organizations like Calgary Police must simply make to everybody that works here. And it's not just the obvious, it's oftentimes the unobvious. It shows up probably as much in their personal lives as it does at work. It's those hidden moments where they're really struggling to cope, to manage themselves in a complicated world. And we don't know which day we're going to go to work, we're going to put up with we're going to see these events. So it's programs like this are so critically important to help us recognize it in ourselves, help us recognize it as peers, and then be able to put services in front of these people to help them cope better. I think I couldn't be more pleased with the acceptance of the program by our people to start with. It's a very good program, but it's only as valuable as the willingness of people to take it. The first 300 that have taken it have given it extremely high praise for its value and its actual meaningfulness within the workplace and its meaningfulness at home. And that's probably the points that aren't well known often. We provide a myriad of services for our employees now, that even prior to this program, around understanding when people are in trouble. Those are the obvious cases that we have a psychological services branch, for instance, in Calgary, that's probably the envy of most of the country in its ability to reach out to employees. This just gives another set of tools, particularly in its ability to be recognized at a peer level. When you're able to understand that someone on your team is struggling, somebody is struggling at home, somewhere, we can actually recognize these signs and then help provide that initial help so they don't fester for too long. And that's a problem we've seen in the past. We've had, anybody who's been in this business long enough will know those occasions where things have festered for far too long and then they become big problems. This is when you start hearing language like PTSD and things come up, is when it's really gone on for a very long time. And we're hoping these are very preemptive, very proactive strategies and help us to understand it earlier. And as I've said here several times, it's about the stigmatization of it, is breaking that away so people know it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to come forward and say, actually, I do recognize you're struggling, or I do recognize I'm struggling and I need some help. And that's the true value of programs like this. Well, I'll let sort of the medical experts talk about what that is, but things like PTSD are those are sort of the manifestations of the problems that we have. There's all sorts of associated stress disorders that go on with working in these fields that have to be recognized. You don't start, my understanding, and I'll let the medical people really get this, but you don't start at PTSD. I think you start with those early issues, those early signs, and trying to get to the people early so they don't really have really deep-seated mental health issues that need long-term care. We're hoping to get to them earlier and have them talk about it earlier and put some of those cares in front of them at the beginning and those services in front of them at the beginning, so we have a better sense of confidence that they can cope, they can maintain their resilience skills. A lot of our issues are the things we don't see, is what happens at home. After you've seen all these events, what happens when you go there, and how are you coping with your family, with your children, with the day-to-day life in the community? These things help us understand the whole employee a little better and help them sort of understand what they need to do once they're here and where they can reach out to within the organization. We're not that far removed from a culture that asked our employees to suck it up. If we talked 20 and 30 years ago, that we're just, we would sort of, those issues of stigmatization occurred because of attitudes like that. I think we've come a long way to recognize that's not the reality, that our employees need support and they need help. But go into difficult calls, whatever it may be, can sort of bring those mental wellness issues forward. And we want to make sure as an organization, we're the organization that our employees know they can come to and ask for that kind of support. So.
Chief, they mentioned a couple times that this is the first police service to have a modified version of this particular program. For the Calgary Police Service specifically, is mental health a quiet problem that really warrants this kind of program, or is this more so of a preventative measure to hope that these types of more serious mental health illnesses don't show up?
Well, we know they're going to show up. We know in every walk of life that mental health challenges are becoming one of the fastest rising health issues the community will have, and we're not immune from those issues. Policing is not immune. I don't think it's something that's perhaps epidemic in policing as much as it's something very real and very alive, and it's difficult to say what one situation affects one person, why it doesn't affect the next person the same way. So being alive to it, being understanding of those issues, and ultimately giving people a place to come to say, I need that assistance. Programs like this allow them to proactively start thinking about it before they have the problem. Recognize it, talk about it, think about it, and then know who they can go to when they start having these issues. And I think that's the most important feature of this, is the proactive nature of it. Get in front of it before it's a problem. Don't wait till you've been to the call and you've struggled and you have these stresses, and now start looking for help. Let's help them get over the stigma of coming forward with the challenges that this profession can present to our employees.
But would you say there are already officers within the service who are already suffering from illnesses who could directly benefit right away from a program like this?
Oh, absolutely. There's absolutely people that can benefit from these programs. Again, like I said, we're not immune from what's out in society today. The pressures of our world that we live in today bring those issues forward as we become an aging workforce. The challenges that people bring with them from home, plus the work experiences, mean we need to start thinking about our employees. Our employees are the most important asset policing presents. Anything that we have, the most important asset we have is our employees, and we must pay attention to those things that sort of distract them from being able to provide the best service they can to the community. You can appreciate that an officer who struggles with coping skills or resilience skills probably are not at their best to deal with some of the community challenges as well. Maybe 2 now in total.
Yeah, I think the trainer, I believe, was a year ago.
Yeah, so we've done a lot to work with training, providing information so we can actually take this course forward for many years by getting trainers ready. So we've been probably a good year at least now in the deliveries.
And have you had any customers?
Well, I mean, fair to say that, as a previous question, we know we'll always have people that require this. What this has created is awareness. People who perhaps weren't able to come forward before now are feeling more comfortable. People having these tools to understand how do we evaluate people who are struggling within our own work environment. Having that ability to openly talk about it has helped for sure. So. We do measure through all of our services we provide for wellness services that those sort of things, try to understand them better. It's difficult to say when you've helped somebody if they're back at work, how much time did they potentially miss or not miss. We just are certainly very alive to the fact that, to your question, is that it's important, if we want to keep people at work and keep them functioning at their best, that we provide these services to them.
Thankfully, it was a lot easier than I had anticipated it would be, but it's very important how you go about implementing it. So we actually worked with folks from all ranks, all occupations, all different environments throughout the service. And we spent days sitting around a table with them saying, what do you wish you had known when you first joined? What would be helpful for you to know? Because it doesn't matter what I think is a good idea for them to know. If it's not relevant and doesn't resonate with them, then it's not going to be very effective. So one of the reasons why this program has been so successful, both within DND and then as well as within CPS and other organizations, is that it's tailored and adapted each time to meet the actual identified requirements of that target audience. So after we asked the soldiers, the sailors, airmen and women what they wanted to know, even what language they wanted to know it in. I mean, that's what the continuum developed out of, because they didn't want to know the diagnostic criteria for the various disorders. In fact, they said they don't even care what the disorders are. They want to know what the behaviors are that would indicate that they're starting to be distressed or their buddies are starting to be distressed. Because in our 2002 StatsCan mental health survey that has just been repeated, we're just starting to get results back, but about 90% of the military members who screened positive for further assessment for a possible mental health disorder didn't recognize that they had a problem for which help would be beneficial for them. So the continuum is a way to really get people to self-identify and say, okay, if I'm not sleeping, my eating habits have changed, I'm isolating and withdrawing, I need to pay attention to all of those things. And you can notice that in your peers and colleagues as well. And so that's what makes it really useful and very relevant to the target audience. It's in their language, it's what they want to know. So it makes it a lot easier to implement when they tell us what it is they need.
Lieutenant, could you provide maybe a couple of common examples that you've seen at DND? Obviously, when soldiers go into war, they see something extremely traumatic that could potentially have effect. But could you give a couple of maybe more lesser known common examples that you've run into in terms of maybe it's workload or maybe it's exposure on a specific mission? Just maybe a couple of examples that you've seen that have been key examples of mental health.
Well, I think one thing that is often misunderstood is that it's not the trauma and it's not post-traumatic stress disorder or even necessarily combat operations that are the biggest issue. Like the Deputy Chief said, we're members of Canadian society and we're affected by mental health problems at the same or similar rates as other members of Canadian society. The one area where we would be different, and police forces differ as well, is that our rates of depression are higher. And that has to do with wear and tear over time, the stress and strain of the job and the cumulative effects. So we do see a lot more depression than we do see trauma, both in the police world as well as in the Canadian forces. And other disorders, we have alcohol misuse and dependency issues, some social phobia and social anxiety as well, which are fairly common. Sure, I think the most important is increasing their ability to recognize in themselves that they may be distressed and creating that normalization that we all go through fluctuations. So once you self-identify, to really make it okay to step forward and get some help. So we've used a couple of creative strategies for that. One was a video we released earlier this year with actually members in uniform talking about their own experiences seeking mental health care. Because again, it doesn't matter what I say to them. I am a healthcare provider, I work in headquarters. They expect a certain message from me. But if they see, a master warrant officer who's in the infantry who's been in combat and says, yeah, I went to get help, and because of that, I'm still in uniform and I'm still able to do my job. That resonates with them to a far higher degree. But we also teach them a number of coping skills. And it's the same as with our physical health, that if we want to stay physically healthy, we need to eat well and exercise and get sleep and all that stuff that we read in those magazines. With our mental health, there are certain things we need to do as well. So we teach them very simple things, like even goal setting, to break overwhelming tasks into smaller chunks so that you can just, take one step at a time. We talk about self-talk. And I think for a lot of people, they don't recognize that they actually speak very negatively to themselves in their head. And if we can even just recognize that and change some of our negative self-talk to positive, that can have a huge impact on the stress hormones we produce, which then affects how we interact with people, how we perform on the job. So a number of different strategies like that, and they're the same ones that are in the program being taught here at CPS as well. Yes, I think in our society in general, we have seen more acceptance and understanding of mental health in the last decade. And I think particularly in the Canadian Forces with our experience in Afghanistan, it created an understanding and awareness that people are going to be impacted by an experience like that. And then at the same time, being able to give them this language to talk about distress and, the early impact of mental health. One of the most rewarding things for me has been hearing from our clinicians across the country that, they'll say, oh, I had 3 guys come into my office last week and say, Doc, I think I'm kind of yellowish orange. And I remember the guy in Cyprus on the way home from Afghanistan told me that's when I need to go and talk to somebody. So they didn't need to know what it was. They didn't need to be able to diagnose it. They just, remembered that when they kind of are halfway down that continuum and starting to experience sleep distress or whatever the symptom is, that's when they need to go and seek help. So we've seen a huge shift in earlier help-seeking behavior. In 2002, it used to take an average of 5 to 7 years before a soldier would come forward for care when they were pretty sure they were impacted by a mental illness. Some of the research that came out of our clinic in Edmonton a few years ago with one of the rotations coming back from Afghanistan showed that when they came in for their post-deployment, enhanced post-deployment screening, so about 6 months after deployment, half of those who were screening positive for further assessment at that point had already sought care on their own. So it's really creating that, it's giving people permission to go in and have things checked out. And we teach them in the program that there's absolutely nothing wrong with going in and saying, listen, I'm experiencing this and that. And if there's nothing wrong, we're happy as clinicians to say, that's absolutely normal, let's continue to monitor it. But we really want to reinforce not to wait until you're pretty sure you have a full-blown illness to come in, and that earlier treatment generally leads to better outcomes.
Well, there wouldn't be a single event that would have inspired it. It's just part of the continuing commitment that this organization has to respecting the complexities of this career and of mental health issues. We're well aware of the preponderance of mental health issues that are affecting the Canadian society right now, and they're affecting our members as well. So it's just part of that that ongoing set of services that we are growing and developing and maintaining within the service right now. What's at stake is obviously not providing the quality of public service that we do currently. If our members are struggling, if our members are unable to cope well, if they don't have those good resiliency skills, when they're out working with the public during difficult times and they're not at their best, it's really easy to imagine that the quality of service won't be very high. The quality of public confidence won't be very high. And then really importantly, then that quality of life for that employee diminishes as well. It's really very sad to see someone who struggles with this sort of illness. Probably all of us know these people now. And I think it's our duty for certain to be able to be in front of that now, provide these kind of services. This is such a great opportunity to leverage what the National Defence has already experienced and bring that to us, so we're able to put that proactive service right out in front now and have that conversation. In our careers, that wouldn't have happened 30 years ago, to have that conversation. We would have very much expected people just to quietly go about their business and leave that alone. I'm very pleased to see now how many people take advantage of this. Now that tells us it's important to them as well. They want to do their jobs well, but they want to be healthy as well.
Is there an avenue for a co-worker to realize
We spend a lot of time with our supervisors, with our officer coaches, within the organization. We certainly wouldn't go down the road of squealing as much as being accepting that shared responsibility that our sense of wellness is important to everybody. And if there's an opportunity to speak up, we would expect people to speak up and say someone needs some help. Through either personal conversations, through programs like this, or through conversations with supervisors or management, to say we think someone's got a concern, can you help? And I'd like to believe we're an organization that's very much willing to help. I had to point that out.
But a co-worker is probably going to see an issue for the individual themselves.
Well, like I said, some of the tools, the self-awareness is a big part of this program, is creating that self-awareness. I think actually that people are, their own sense of self-awareness is what's really important about the program. Is nobody knows you're struggling more than you yourself, but are you willing to speak about it? Are you willing to step up and talk? Do you have the confidence? Do you feel safe in the organization? Are you confident enough in the organization to believe the supports are there for you to do something about it if you speak up yourself? But you're all right that if you're not willing to do it and a peer recognizes it, can they help? That's one of the things that the strengths of the service, is I believe, is our ability for people to leverage each other. And but at the end of the day, it comes down to their own sense of personal responsibility in this as well.
Chief, this question is a little off topic, but Medicine Hat just announced recently that they are getting a vehicle, and it's a little bit of a debate, and I was wondering if you have comments on that.
Well, with regards to this, I'm not sure what the debate is, if it's the presence of an armored vehicle in the community, if it's the feeling of, does that create an illusion of safety or perhaps an illusion of fear in the community? I'm not sure what the debate would be, but again, I think it's part of the sign of the times, is when you know what's going on in the world right now, and sort of the feelings, it's easy to understand the feelings of a concern over what goes on. But again, we just want to make sure that we are presenting the officer with the best opportunity to provide that level of comfort and safety for the people that we police with. And, we always have to manage issues like that anyway. So, I mean, we've seen what goes on with the perceptions of safety, and our perceptions of safety as well have to be managed. And again, that's part of this program, is to help us to do a better job at that. So.
Final questions? Well, again, thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panel, and thank you for coming out.